Hello, my friends. We're going to talk about Venus star points and this very interesting yin-yang polarity that goes on with them. This is part two in I think will be a two-part series. But you don't really need to watch the first part. I just build this up very, very slowly in part one. For those of you who have not as much background in the astronomy, if you're already familiar with the Venus star points, you'll be able to jump in right here. And even if you don't necessarily have to go back to part one, but it will fill in some details in case you're not familiar with all that. What we're looking at here is the Venus star points. It's a pattern that's created over 8 years. And I'm just showing you one of these 8-year cycles. On March 26th, 2021, Sun and Venus are conjunct at 5 Aries 50. It's just a fact. You can look it up. You can do a chart. You'll see that they're conjunct. And Venus is direct. It's not retrograde. There are two kinds of Sun-Venus conjunctions, retrograde and direct. Let's look at just the direct ones for a moment. Then I'm going to add the retrograde ones, and you'll see something fascinating that happens. When is the next time that Sun and Venus are conjunct and Venus is direct? It'll be about 1 year and 7 months later. So if we add 1 year and 7 months to this date, we're going to get something like late October 2022. There it is. Late October 2022. Now, notice that this next point is not the next point of the star. These points do not go around in a circle. They crisscross over because this next conjunction of Sun and Venus is about 144 degrees earlier, 2/5 of a circle. So I put a little arrow here showing that we went from here to here. Now we're going to go to the next conjunction. If I add 7 months to October, I think I get around May or June of 2023. And there it is in June of 2024. I need to go 1 year, which would bring me to October, plus another 7 months. June of 2024, June 4th, the next conjunction, 144 degrees later. We add another 1 year, 7 months. We get early January 2026. We go 144 degrees earlier. There it is, roughly 144. You'll notice this 5-pointed star is not perfect. It's a little, it's not a perfect 5-pointed star. Add another year and 7 months, we get August 2027, and we go 144 degrees earlier, we get 19 Leo, and then we go another 144 degrees earlier, and we get the last one in March 2029 at 3 Aries. And now, after 8 years, we've returned back to the beginning, a little more than 2 degrees earlier. Now, all of these are beginning points, by the way. We could, if we started here and we got to the 6th one, we would come back here. So they're all equal points. I just happened to start at this one. That's the 5-pointed star. Now, I've left out half of them. I've only done 5. A lot of times in astrology, we say there are 5 Sun-Venus conjunctions in 8 years. No, there are 10. These are only the retrograde ones. Where are the retrograde ones? I'm going to show you those. I think I have it in the next slide, but one of the upcoming slides, I'll show it to you. Well, they occur equally often. Both the direct and retrograde, they're all equally spaced from each other. So they're going to be halfway in between, and they will fall right here. So the retrograde ones will be halfway in between. So the next conjunction of Sun and Venus after March 26, 21, where is it? Let me ask that question again. We have a Sun-Venus conjunction at 5 Aries 50 on March 26, 2021. When is the next one? Well, it's not this one. This is the next time it happens when Venus is direct. It'll alternate, this yin-yang polarity. The next time Sun and Venus are conjunct, Venus will be retrograde, and it will be here. It will be up here around 16 Capricorn. So the retrograde Sun-Venus conjunctions occur at the same points as the direct ones within about 2 degrees. You got it? So there are 10 Sun-Venus conjunctions in 8 years, but they overlap. They sit on top of each other at 5 basic points. But the interesting thing is you don't have just 1 point here at 16 Capricorn. You're going to have 2 points because you'll have the retrograde one. And here it is. Whoa! Look at all that mess. Okay, let me tell you what's going on here. What I'm showing is, first of all, here's the red star. The red star are the Sun-Venus conjunctions where Venus is retrograde. And like I told you, it's sitting almost on top of the blue star, which is the Sun-Venus direct. So if we start here, what I did with the retrograde is I didn't put in the planetary positions because then it would be even messier. I just put it in a box. That on January 9th, 2022, Sun is conjunct Venus and Venus is retrograde. As I told you, very close to this one, about 2 degrees different. Actually, it's almost 2.5 degrees different. And then if we go 144 degrees before this, we'll get to the next retrograde. So I drew the arrow. There's the red arrow. And that will be 20 Leo 28 on August 13th, 2023. So both the Sun and both the direct and the retrograde conjunctions make a 5-pointed star. And in time, it alternates between them. You see all these little curvy black lines? That's showing you what's happening in time order. So if we start here on March 26, 2021, and we go 9.5 months later, we get to the next Sun-Venus conjunction, which is retrograde. Alternates between direct and retrograde. And then that's on January 9th, 2022. We go 9.5 months later. That'll bring us into October, late October. There it is. And it's a direct one. The yellow dates are direct. The pink are retrograde. We go 9.5 months later. We go to a retrograde one in August 2023. We go 9.5 months later. We get to a direct one in June 2024. The point is this. This might look confusing. But the reason it looks confusing is because there's this beautiful, intricate tapestry. Let me summarize what's happening. Every 9.5 months, there is a Sun-Venus conjunction. You can look in your ephemeris, whatever you want to do. You can produce listings with your software of Sun-Venus conjunctions. You'll see that there's a conjunction every 9.5 months. And you will see that there are 10 Sun-Venus conjunctions in 8 years, not 5. People say there are 5. No, there are 10. Half of them are direct and half of them are retrograde. You will also notice, if you look carefully, that the Sun-Venus retrograde conjunctions occur halfway in between the direct ones. And they land right on the 5-pointed star. Because the direct star jumps 144 degrees to the next one. The retrograde star, when Venus is retrograde, does the same exact thing. It means that halfway in between those times, they land at almost the same point. This means that the area from 16 Capricorn to 18 Capricorn is being activated at different times over, this 10-year period. So we see that in early January 2026, we get 16.5 Capricorn activated. 4 years earlier, we had 2 degrees later at 18 Capricorn was the star point. And 4 years after this, we have 16 Capricorn again activated. You get some interesting things here. 16 Capricorn is activated in January 2026 and then again in January 2030. So here's another way to look at it. Every 8 years, there is a conjunction of Sun and Venus that is again direct or again retrograde. But every 4 years, this is somewhat surprising. Every 4 years, there's a Sun-Venus conjunction in the same degree. Not every 8 years. So I just want to make this clear because a lot of people say there's a Sun-Venus conjunction in about the same degree every 8 years. No, it's every 4 years. One will be direct and one will be retrograde. So if we take 2026, January 6th, add 4 years, happens to be almost, like extremely close in this case. 4 years later, again on January 6, 2030. So I'm going from 2026 to 2030, from a direct Venus to a retrograde Venus at the same degree. Wow! That means for 8 years, 16 Capricorn and a half, this is extremely close, gets activated. Gets activated in 2026 and then in 2030. Let's just randomly pick another example over here. Let's see, we have years of 2022 and 2026, and it moves only a little over a degree. So in October 2022, this point gets activated, 29.5 Libra. And that's the direct one. That's part of this blue Venus star points. And then a little over a degree later, 4 years later, it gets triggered again by a Sun-Venus where Venus is retrograde. So again, every 4 years, a point of the star gets activated, and it alternates between retrograde and direct. Let me show you one more example to make it clear. Let's take June 4, 2024. We add 4 years. Usually we subtract a few days, we get June 1st, 2028. In June 2024, 14 Gemini 30 is activated by a Sun-Venus conjunction. 4 years later, it moves 3 degrees earlier to 11 Gemini 26. It can move anywhere from nothing, like 16.5 Capricorn, gets activated twice in a row, or it can move several degrees, as it does here, 3 degrees, sometimes even a little more than that. It varies because the changing speeds of Sun and Venus, even heliocentrically, they change speed a little bit. But visually, you'll see the two stars sitting almost on top of each other. Bottom line is that Sun and Venus are conjunct. How often? How much time between Sun-Venus conjunctions? Every Sun-Venus conjunctions in the same place in the sky every 4 years. A Sun-Venus conjunction that is again direct, 2 direct in a row, in the same position in the sky, every 8 years. How often does a Sun-Venus conjunction occur? Not necessarily in the same point in the sky, just a Sun-Venus conjunction. How often does it happen? Every 9.5 months. Every 9.5 months there's a Sun-Venus conjunction. And 9.5 months after one, the next one will alternate. It'll go from direct to retrograde to direct to retrograde. 2 times 9.5 months is 1 year, 7 months. Every 1 year, 7 months is another point on, for example, the blue star. The blue star is created every 1 year, 7 months. Every 1 year, 7 months, go back 144 degrees. The red star is also created the same way. Every 1 year, 7 months, Venus is retrograde and conjunct the Sun. And the two overlap and sit almost on top of each other. Okay. And in time, instead of every 1 year, 7 months, it's half of that every 9.5 months. So every 9.5 months, we hit one of these star points. And it alternates between the blue star, the direct star, and the red star. So we go from a blue point to a red point to a blue point to a red point over time. It alternates between the two stars. So, I think we can think of this as basically one integrated yin-yang star. a pulsating outwards and a drawing within. A fast Venus, a retrograde Venus. Very fast, extremely fast as Venus gets, and then as slow as it gets, retrograde. Pulsating back and forth. You can almost look at this as like a Christmas star that's pulsating red and blue, red and blue, red and blue, making this purplish glowing thing. And the whole thing rotates over time. All rotates. So two blue and red stars almost on top of each other, pulsating. Red drawing you in, blue sending you out, going back and forth every 9.5 months. 9.5 months out, 9.5 months in. And then, so the outflow happens every 2 times 9.5. Every 1 year, 7 months, out. And the outflow crisscrosses across. You have an outflow here in March 2021, jump over to this almost opposite point, 144 degrees later. At 1 year, 7 months later, that's going to be late October 26, another outflow. So these arrows are like pulses. You're going to pulse. 1 year, 7 months later, another pulse, out, shooting out, shooting out, shooting out. Then in between those, halfway in between, pulsating in. And over time, it's jumping from out to in, out to in. In other words, fast Venus, retrograde Venus, fast Venus, retrograde Venus. So it's a little intricate, takes a little while to explain it, but that's the beauty of the sky. It's the sky itself is woven together in this kind of beautiful, intricate way. I don't think it's necessary to memorize everything I said. What's important is to just remember some basic things, like when you're looking at a Venus star point, is it a fast Venus or a retrograde Venus? It's never in between. It's never like an average Venus. You're not going to have Sun conjunct Venus, and Venus is moving, like 50 minutes a day or 1 degree. It's either moving like 1.5 degrees a day, it's moving really fast, or it's retrograde. It's either the very fast or extremely slow, meaning retrograde. So, so that's the pattern that's going on. There are actually 10 points, and each point is getting hit twice in the 8-year cycle. And what's interesting to me also is when it's the same degree, like this 16 Capricorn, which gets lit, you can think of it as a light going on, in January 2026 with the outgoing direct, and then 4 years later, same exact point, whereas this one jumps 3 degrees. Anyway, it's interesting. I would think that in mundane prediction of events, if something ties up with 16 Capricorn from 2026 to 2032, especially between 2030 and, not 2032, 2034. From 2030 to 2034, this 16.5 Capricorn, roughly, between 16 and 16.5 Capricorn, has gotten triggered by the previous direct Venus star back on 2026, and then by the retrograde Venus star. The direct one is the Yang one. The retrograde one is the Yin one. Both of them activating between 2030 and 2034. That should be a super powerful point of joy, of beauty, that, it could be researched. But regardless of what it exactly means astrologically, it is a fascinating, beautiful cosmic tapestry, sacred geometry that we see here. Okay, now, one more thing I want to mention. I can even make this more complicated, but I didn't do it because it's not really necessary. If you go 8 degrees before all these conjunctions, like if we go 8 degrees before 16 Capricorn, we will get 8 Capricorn. So if you go 8 degrees before let me see if I'm saying this right. Let me read what I wrote. We could also add Venus turns retrograde about 8 degrees ahead of the 5 points of the star. Turns direct about 8 degrees before the 5 points star. So we can go 8 degrees before and after these points. So if we go 8 degrees after 16 Capricorn 22, we get about 24 Capricorn. That's where Venus turned retrograde. And then it turns direct about 8 degrees before this. So there's this oscillation of when Venus turns retrograde and direct. The main point I want to make about this is that if we plot the 8 points where Venus turns direct, or the 8 points where Venus turns retrograde, it's also a 5-pointed star. So the 5-pointed star refers to several things. It's the points where Sun and Venus are conjunct. And if you're doing it as any conjunction, there's actually 2 points at each star point. There's 2 of them. There's only one previous one, but there's over an 8-year period, there are 2 points next to each other. So if you're looking at it as an 8-year cycle, there are 2 conjunction points, one where Venus is retrograde, one where it's direct. Then there's also the 5-pointed star of where Venus turns direct 8 degrees earlier, and then where Venus turns retrograde 8 degrees later. So there's a 5-pointed star for the conjunctions of Sun-Venus. There's a 5-pointed star for the points where Venus turns direct, and there's a 5-pointed star for where the Venus turns retrograde. And maybe those points where Venus turns direct and where it turns retrograde are also critical points. Just something to think about. And maybe the point for the direct, maybe the blue triangle, we need to think about it somewhat separately from the red triangle. I don't know, but it's fascinating. All these things that are going on in this beautiful, intricate cosmic tapestry. Oh, and finally, just a few more points. What about Sun-Mercury? We talked about Sun-Venus. Well, Sun-Mercury does the same thing in terms of retrograde direct. Each Sun-Mercury conjunction is exactly the same as Sun-Venus in that Mercury is either extremely retrograde, going backwards, very fast backwards, or very fast forwards. And you have the same thing with the polarity of heliocentric conjunctions and oppositions. All that's the same. So Sun-Mercury also has this yin-yang polarity, exactly like Sun-Venus. The only thing about Sun-Mercury is it doesn't make a beautiful 5-pointed star. I looked at it, tried to find a pattern, and what I found is after 13 years, the Sun-Mercury conjunctions will repeat about 3 degrees later. So on January 10th, 2020, there's a Sun-Mercury conjunction at almost 20 Capricorn. 13 years later, there's a conjunction about 3 degrees later and about 3 days later. So 2 to 3 days and 13 years later, the Sun-Mercury will repeat. So Sun-Mercury and Sun-Venus are not that different. It's just the Sun-Venus is so much more conspicuously beautiful. You get a 5-pointed star in 8 years. Actually, you're getting 2 stars. You're getting the blue star, the direct star, and the red star, the retrograde one, and they're overlapping each other. 10 Sun-Venus conjunctions in 8 years. 5 of them direct, 5 retrograde. With Sun-Mercury, you have to go out to 13 years, and then it moves along at about 3 degrees, which is fairly close. But you're going to have, you have to wait 13 years. So it's just not as simple. I mean, we could draw the picture and see if it looks interesting, see if we can make sense out of it. So there's some possibility at some point people will begin to focus on the Sun-Mercury, but there's so many points, it's just not as simple and clear, and you might say elegant as Sun-Venus. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that Sun-Mercury goes to the same exact polarity where the retrograde Mercury conjunct the Sun will occur equally often and halfway in between the direct ones, and you have this alternating yin-yang thing, and you do have a pattern. It's just over 13 years with a lot more points than there's about, I think, 39 points instead of 5. And it's just like, it's a much more complex, or, not as simple to just look at and go, well, wow, isn't that pretty and simple? It isn't. Now, if you want to see your star points, I'll just show you this really quickly. I'm not going to show you a lot of the Sirius software. Oh, by the way, here, I'll just show you this as a little aside very quickly, is I wanted to look at, this is a fun thing, I just wanted to look at the how the Sun Venus changes over time, and that's kind of fun to watch. Let me speed that up a little bit more. Yeah, so you see Venus leaving the Sun and then reaches about 47, 48 degrees, then Venus retrograde, then it speeds up and it catches up to the Sun. Remember, the Sun's moving at almost a constant speed, so you're not seeing a change in the speed of the Sun. You're seeing the Venus getting faster and faster and faster, getting way ahead of the Sun, forms that semi-square aspect, and then it slows down, goes backwards, speeds up. So you're seeing Venus oscillating around the Sun. Anyway, sometimes I just like to look at things. So it's just gives me an intuition or something about it. Anyway, but what I wanted to show you was, what did I want to show you? I don't remember, sorry. Let me go back to my PowerPoint. Whoops, not that, sorry. I wanted to go back to my PowerPoint. How to select the Venus star point. So what you do is you go to Forecast and you select Integrated Listings, returns, lunations, etc., and then select Venus star points and something else. And then you check this box, and this is for Ben Affleck, the actor, and those are his Venus star points. One is the right foot, right hand, head, left foot, and an innovation of Ariel Gutman, author of the book, The Venus Star Point. So the innovation from Ariel is exactly how you interpret these points and what the points are that are related to you and how they function in your life. So that's that feature. I can also show you how I produced all those listings. If you want that, I can make another follow-up video. It's pretty simple and straightforward. I think that's it. Oh, one last thing. I think this is the very last thing. Yeah. And then just some news about other services. But in regard to Venus Star Point, last thing I want to mention is this is a graphic ephemeris, also produced in the Sirius software. It's another way to see this cycle. And here, the orange is the Sun. This is the Sun moving from around the zodiac, Aries through Pisces. So this is we call it first harmonic, or 0 to 360 degree graphic ephemeris. And the orange is the Sun, the green is Venus, and it shows where they cross here in June 2000. They're conjunct. And of course, Venus is direct. Now, if I go the 9.5 months later, I see the Venus doing this little backwards movement, means it's retrograde, and there's another conjunction. So the direct ones are here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the sixth one comes back to the same degree. It's horizontally across. That means it's at the same degree. And the retrograde conjunctions, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, back to 1, are occurring exactly halfway between the direct ones. So look at this line of direct, retrograde, equally spaced. Excuse me. And the retrograde conjunctions also in a line and going right through the direct one. You see this Venus is direct, conjunct the Sun on June 1st, 2000, and at the same degree is the retrograde one. I did the retrograde with a small circle just so I wouldn't make the retrograde little loop here invisible. I wanted you to be able to see that. So that's a short time that Venus is retrograde. Anyway, another way to visualize. A lot of times we like to visualize, look at things, explore them, get an intuition and feeling in different ways, looking at the animation, looking at the graphic ephemeris, looking at the positions in a wheel, all giving, all the different listings I showed, especially in part 1 of this series, all different ways to verify, to confirm, because sometimes you'll read something, even in a science book, astronomy book, and I like to see it, confirm it. Look, is this always true? What's actually happening? And so that's what I've done in this 2-part series. Just checked it out and observed what's actually going on and confirming all those details and what it might mean to us as astrologers interpreting it. So that's it for this video, friends. I'd just like to mention the book, The Astrology of Bipolar Disorder, that gives the scientific evidence for vibrational astrology. That's the big deal, and the academic nonprofit research institute that we're founding, Cosmobiology Institute. It should be founded by early 2023. The website, cosmobiology.org, is already up. The annual Vibrational Astrology Conference in March of every year, usually early March in Gainesville, Florida. It's not online, it's a live conference. And I'm making this particular video in 2022. Next one will be March 3rd through 5th, 2023. But you might be watching this video years in the future, and there will be a Vibrational Astrology Conference each year. And also, if you want me to stay in touch with you, to let you know things that are happening, lectures that I'm giving, I give lectures for different groups or new classes. I'm starting new classes, for example, in January 2023. Again, you may be watching this in the year 2040 or something. But if you're watching it as this was released, if you want to be in touch with those things, what's going on, go to astrologydc.com and click on join the email list. And I will send you an email once every month or two. Astrosoftware.com is where the serious software that we use in this video, and astrovibe.org is the new Association for Vibrational Astrologers that's being formed. I'd just like to let you guys know about that stuff. Okay, we're done, and we're at 32 minutes or so. So that's it on the yin-yang polarity of the Venus star points. I hope that helps you understand some more details about what's going on with Venus star points. And if you want to learn about interpreting them in your chart, Ariel Gutman, as I mentioned before, is the leading person in working with that. Okay, my friends, thank you very much for listening. God bless. Namaste.